The blood made a strange pattern on the wooden floor, almost artistic. I remember staring at those stains while holding the knife, thinking that I had finally created something of my own, something no one had forced me to do. My parents always said I was good for nothing except following orders. That night, I proved them wrong. For the first time, I made a decision for myself, and that decision cost 2 lives. My name is Matthew. I'm 19 now. I got out of the juvenile detention center 3 months ago after spending almost 3 years inside. Most people only know the final part of my story, the boy who killed his own parents while they slept. The media loved that part. Son kills parents with knife. Teen confesses to double homicide. Family tragedy ends in bloodshed. Perfect headlines to sell papers, right? But nobody asked what happened inside that house before the stabbing. Nobody wanted to know why a 16-year-old would reach that point. It's easier to call me a monster, a psychopath, a freak. Easier than facing the truth that monsters sometimes create other monsters. I'm sitting in this empty park as I tell this story. I chose this place because I need the fresh air, the open space. I spent too much time confined. First in their house, then in detention. Now I'm free. But the truth is, I've never really felt free, not even now. What happened in that house for 16 years? Well, it's hard to explain. People think violence is only when they hit you, when they physically hurt you. But there are other ways to destroy someone. Ways that don't leave visible marks, but break you inside, bit by bit, day after day. I'm not here to justify myself or ask for forgiveness. What I did was terrible, I know that, but I want to tell my complete story. I want you to understand how I reached that point, how I transformed from victim to executioner, how my parents, August and Claire, transformed me into a weapon that eventually turned against them. If you're really paying attention to me, if you're really trying to understand what I'm about to tell you, I need to ask you something. Like this video right now, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and comment where you're watching from. This helps me know who's really willing to listen to this story until the end, without quick judgments. It's not an easy story, but I promise to show you a side of reality that many people prefer to pretend doesn't exist. And look, subscribing here isn't just clicking a button. Those who subscribe become part of a family that supports the kids in these accounts. Each subscription is like saying, you're not alone. It might seem small to you, but to me, it means I'm not talking to myself. So subscribe now and show that you're with me on this. You think you know horror stories? Wait until you hear what happened when the doors of that house closed. And the worst part is that for a long time, I didn't even realize it wasn't normal. It was just my life. I think I had a normal childhood until I was 6, at least from what I can remember. We lived in a small house in the suburbs of Detroit, but we weren't in need. My father, August, worked as a security guard at some company. My mother, Claire, did cleaning jobs occasionally. Nothing fancy, but we had enough. I remember some good moments, a chocolate cake birthday, trips to the park near our house, my mother teaching me to tie my shoes, simple, normal things. I was a regular kid, I think. I liked drawing, running, comic books. I had some friends at school, but everything started to change when my dad lost his job. He stayed home for months, drinking more and more. Money became tight and tension grew in the house. At first it was just arguments, doors slamming, nights without dinner. Then came the silence, a heavy silence, full of strange looks in my direction. That's when my dad started talking about alternative businesses. My mom resisted at first, but not for long. Soon they were different, whispering in corners of the house, closing doors when I approached. Suddenly we started having money again. Not much, but enough to pay bills, buy food, even occasional gifts for me. I was 7 when I realized something was wrong. Strange people started visiting our house always at night, always speaking quietly. Packages were delivered and picked up. My father started watching me differently, as if he was evaluating me. The boy could be useful, I heard him tell my mother one night. No one suspects a child. That's how it started. First, they were simple tasks, taking a package to a neighbor, delivering an envelope to a man in the park, keeping an eye on the street, and warning if I saw police. I didn't exactly understand what was happening, but I knew it was wrong. When I asked, My father would say it was adult business and that I just needed to obey. "Do you want us to starve again?" he would ask when I hesitated. "Do you want to see your mother crying because there's no food to put on the table?" Guilt was a powerful weapon, and they knew how to use it. By 9, I was completely involved. August and Claire, I stopped calling them Dad and Mom in my mind around that time, had a small drug-dealing operation in the neighborhood. Nothing big, but profitable enough. And I was their perfect messenger, their facade. Who would suspect a skinny kid carrying his school backpack? School, by the way, became secondary. I went just enough to avoid drawing attention from authorities. When I missed a lot, Claire would write fake notes about illnesses, medical appointments. My homework wasn't done, my grades plummeted. Teachers tried to talk to me a few times, but I had been well trained to lie. "I'm just tired," I would say. I couldn't sleep well. It wasn't exactly a lie. I really didn't sleep. I spent nights awake, afraid, because when I made mistakes, and eventually everyone does, the punishment was severe. August had creative methods. He particularly liked locking me in the hallway closet, a narrow, dark space for hours or sometimes the whole night. "For you to think about what you did," he would say. Other times it was food deprivation, or kneeling on corn kernels, or enduring his screams centimeters from my face, his breath of alcohol and cigarettes surrounding me, while he listed all my flaws, all the reasons why I was a burden, useless except for following orders. Claire didn't punish me physically, but her method was equally effective. Silence. Days without speaking a word to me, treating me as if I were invisible. And when she finally spoke, it was to remind me of how much she had sacrificed for me, how her life would be better if I had never been born. "Look what you made me become," she would say, looking at her own reflection in the living room mirror. I could have been somebody, done something with my life. I tried to ask for help once at 11. I gathered courage and talked to a teacher, Mrs. Henderson. I told her my parents made me deliver things to strange people, that they locked me in the closet when I made mistakes. She seemed concerned, said she would talk to the principal, that someone from Child Protective Services would visit our house. That night, when I got home, August and Claire already knew everything. The school had called. They smiled at the social worker who came to visit us. They showed a clean, organized house. They talked about how I had a vivid imagination, how I was having nightmares, making up stories. "He's always been very creative," said Claire, running her hand through my hair with false tenderness. "Sometimes he confuses reality with fantasy." When the social worker left, satisfied with her notes about an unfounded report, I learned the hardest lesson. There was nowhere to run. No one would believe me against 2 convincing adults. The closet seemed even darker that night, and I stayed there until dawn. Over time, I became what they wanted. I stopped resisting, questioning. It was easier to obey, execute the tasks, deliver the packages, watch the streets, lie when necessary. I became efficient at the only thing they allowed me to be, their instrument. At school, I distanced myself from everyone, had no friends, participated in nothing. I lived in a parallel world where nothing mattered beyond surviving each day. My eyes were always on the floor. My voice was hardly ever heard. I became a ghost, passing through the corridors unnoticed. And at home, I became the perfect son, obedient, silent, efficient. Exactly what August and Claire wanted, a puppet they could control. But even puppets have their limits, and I was reaching mine. When I turned 13, things got worse. August and Claire's business had grown, and with it, the demands. I no longer just delivered small packages in the neighborhood. Now they sent me to other parts of the city. They made me spend hours observing certain houses, noting who came in and out. Sometimes I had to take pictures discreetly with an old cell phone they gave me specifically for this. "You have an angel face," August would say, holding my chin firmly between his fingers. "Nobody suspects you. You're our trump card." It was during this time that I began to better understand what we were doing. It wasn't just drug dealing, although that continued. August had entered a larger scheme, something related to extortion, loans at absurd interest rates to desperate people. And I was used to collect information about these people, their schedules, their routines, who lived with them. The humiliation became more elaborate too. It wasn't enough anymore to lock me in the closet or leave me without food. Now August took pleasure in embarrassing me. On one occasion, when I returned from school, I found some of his partners in the living room. Big men, with tattoos on their arms and hard expressions. August called me, made me stand in the middle of the room. "This here's my main informant," he said, laughing. "Doesn't look like much, right? But he's useful. Come on, kid, tell them what you found out about Martinez." I mechanically recited the information I had collected about a man who owed them money, where he worked, what time he left, that he was trying to raise money by selling belongings online. "See?" August smiled. "The best part is he does all this for a plate of food, right, kid?" The men laughed. One of them suggested I should bark like a dog since I was so obedient. August found it amusing. "Come on, bark for them," he ordered. I hesitated, feeling my face burn with shame. His gaze hardened. "Bark!" And I barked. Standing in the middle of the room in front of 4 adults who were roaring with laughter, I made dog sounds until August said it was enough. Then I was sent to my room without dinner. Claire watched it all in silence, drinking wine in a corner of the room. Later, when the men had already gone, I heard her arguing with August. "You go too far sometimes," she said. "The kid needs to know his place," he replied. "Besides, it keeps him afraid. Fear is good. Fear ensures obedience." That was their dynamic. August humiliated, broke, shattered. Claire observed, sometimes intervened slightly, but in the end, always supported her husband. They were a perfect team, the executioner and the accomplice, who occasionally pretended to be the voice of reason. At 14, I discovered something that changed everything. I was looking for money in their room. Yes, sometimes I stole small amounts. It was my only form of silent rebellion. When I found a folder with documents, among them was a birth certificate, mine, except that the mother's name wasn't Claire, it was Beatrice Wilson. I confronted Claire that same night when August had gone out. "Who is Beatrice Wilson?" I asked, showing the document. She went pale, then her expression hardened. "Where did you find that? Answer me. Who is she?" Claire sighed, poured herself more wine. "Your biological mother, a junkie who owed us money. When you were about 2 years old, she couldn't pay. So we accepted you as payment." The coldness with which she said this still gives me chills. She continued explaining that Beatrice had died of an overdose shortly after, that they had forged documents to register me as their child, that they had done me a favor by taking me from a drug-addicted mother. "We should have left you in the system, in an orphanage. We gave you a roof, food. You bought me. We saved you," she corrected, her eyes cold. "In exchange, you serve us. It's a fair deal." When August came home and discovered I knew the truth, his reaction was different from what I expected. He laughed. Laughed as if it were the funniest thing in the world. "Now you understand, don't you? You were never anything to us beyond an investment, a tool. I thought we had made that very clear." That night, I didn't sleep. The truth echoed in my head. I wasn't their son, never was. I was just property, something they had acquired, like buying an appliance or a piece of furniture. The whole family charade, as dysfunctional as it was, had been exactly that, a charade. The revelation should have somehow freed me, but it only brought more pain. If I wasn't their child, then who was I? I had no memories of my real mother. I knew nothing about my biological father. It was as if my identity had been erased before I could even form it. In the following months, the tasks became more dangerous. August now made me deliver larger packages, sent me to more distant areas of the city. Once I was approached by police officers while waiting at a bus stop with a backpack full of drugs. By pure luck, and because I looked exactly what I was, a frightened teenager, they just asked if I was okay and went on their way. When I told August about the incident, he just shrugged. "If they had caught you, we would have said you stole the backpack, that we knew nothing about it." That's when I fully understood. I was disposable to them. If something went wrong, I would be abandoned without hesitation. It might even be convenient for them, a perfect scapegoat. The worst part was that I had nowhere to run. I had tried once at 12. I took a bus downtown with the vague idea of finding some kind of shelter. August found me in less than 8 hours. He had contacts everywhere, including with some corrupt cops. The punishment for that attempt was so severe that I never considered running away again. At 15, I began to change. Not externally, I remained the same quiet, obedient boy with downcast eyes. But inside, something was breaking, or maybe hardening. I started to observe August and Claire with different eyes. I studied their habits, their routines, their weaknesses. I noticed how August always drank too much on Fridays, how Claire took sleeping pills almost every night. I began to store small bits of information, like someone collecting puzzle pieces without knowing what image they would form. A specific incident accelerated this internal transformation. It was on a Saturday night. I had just returned from a delivery when I found August especially drunk in the living room. Claire wasn't there. She had gone out with a friend, something rare. August told me to sit beside him on the couch. He started talking about how I was growing up, how I was almost a man. "It's time for you to learn other things," he said with a smile that froze me inside. "Things every man needs to know." He turned on the TV and put on a pornographic video. He forced me to watch while making grotesque comments, asking if I had already experienced something like that, if I had already been with any girl. I sat there, rigid, looking at the screen without really seeing, wishing to disappear. It wasn't the first time August had tried these man-to-man talks, but he had never gone this far. "Maybe we should take you to meet some girls who work for Martinez," he suggested, referring to one of his partners who managed brothels. "For you to become a real man." Something in me broke at that moment. The idea of being taken to a place like that, of being forced to... No, it was a limit I wouldn't allow to be crossed. When I finally managed to go to my room hours later, I made a decision. I didn't know exactly what or how yet, but something needed to change. I needed to do something. For the first time in years, I felt an emotion different from constant fear and resignation. Anger. A cold, calculating anger that began to slowly burn inside me. That's when I started planning. It wasn't yet a plan to kill them. Honestly, I don't think I was capable of explicitly thinking about that at the time. It was more a plan to defend myself, to establish a boundary, to ensure that certain lines wouldn't be crossed. I began to hide small things that might be useful. A pocket knife I found during one of the deliveries, medications I stole from the neighborhood pharmacy, money I hid in a hole in the wall behind my bed. I also began to record things. In a normal school notebook, between notes from classes I rarely attended, I wrote details of August and Claire's operations, names, dates, locations. It was my life insurance, I thought. If they tried to go too far, I would have something to negotiate with. What I didn't know was that I was preparing for something much bigger than a negotiation. I was preparing for the moment when I would finally break the puppet strings they had made of me. A week before my 16th birthday, August called me for a serious conversation. Claire was present, sitting on the edge of the sofa, drinking her usual wine, but she seemed tense. "You're big enough now for greater responsibilities," said August, pouring himself some whiskey. "We have an important job for you." The job, as he described, was no longer delivering packages or observing houses. It was actively participating in a collection. A debtor who refused to pay, who had disrespected August. "You'll go with Marcus and Tyler," he explained, referring to two of his most violent men. "They'll take care of most of it, but you need to be there." "For what?" I asked, feeling a knot in my stomach. "To learn, and to help with some things." Some things, I later found out, involved holding the man while the other two beat him, and then cleaning up the blood, serving as an alibi if necessary. We were just taking August's son to see the city. When I fully understood what they wanted from me, I refused. For the first time in years, I directly said no. August's reaction was quick and brutal, but this time I didn't just take it. I had grown, was stronger than I appeared. I defended myself as best I could, receiving and returning blows until I was dominated by him. Bleeding from my nose, sitting on the living room floor, I heard the ultimatum. "You're going to do this tomorrow night, or I'm going to fulfill that promise of taking you to Martinez, not for you to have fun, but for you to work for him. Do you understand what I'm saying? I understood. Martinez didn't just manage female prostitution. Claire, who had watched the entire scene without intervening, finally spoke. You better obey this time, Matthew. We don't have a choice. It's this or something worse. It was the first time I heard her use my name in months. Usually it was just boy, kid, or when she was irritated, failed abortion. One of her favorite nicknames for me since I discovered the truth about my origins. That night, locked in my room, the only advantage of growing up had been gaining a room with a door. Although the lock was often open from the outside, I made my decision. I would not participate in that collection. I would not help beat a man, and I definitely would not go to Martinez's. There was a fourth option that August and Claire hadn't considered. I spent the night planning. I knew Claire would take her sleeping pills. As always, August would probably drink late, like every Friday. They would sleep deeply. I retrieved the pocket knife I had hidden, but realized it wouldn't be enough. In the kitchen, I found a large knife, one of those for cutting meat. I experienced the weight in my hand, feeling something strange. Not exactly determination, not even anger. It was more like acceptance, as if I were finally accepting a role I had avoided for a long time. I waited until 3 a.m. The house was in absolute silence. I walked barefoot down the hallway, the knife in my right hand, the cell phone with a flashlight in my left. Their bedroom door was ajar. I entered silently. I could see the outlines of both in the king-size bed, the only extravagance they allowed themselves. August snored slightly. Claire was motionless, probably under the effect of the pills. I shined the light on August's face. Even that didn't wake him up. He had drunk too much, as I predicted. I looked at the man who had destroyed my life, who had transformed me into his tool, his object, the man who threatened to transform me into something even worse. There was no hesitation. The first blow was to the neck, quick and deep. He woke up. His eyes widened in surprise and pain. He tried to scream, but only managed to make a gurgling sound as the blood gushed out. I struck again and again and again. Claire woke up with the commotion, looked at the scene, her husband thrashing, me holding the bloody knife, and began to scream. It was the only sound she made before I turned to her. Her last words were, "I knew you would end up like this." I don't remember exactly how many times I struck each of them. At some point, I stopped. I was breathless, covered in blood. The room smelled of iron and something more primitive. Death, perhaps. I looked at the bodies, at the scene I had created. The blood had interesting patterns on the white sheet, on the walls, on the wooden floor, almost artistic, as I said at the beginning. I didn't feel remorse at that moment, nor joy, nor relief, nor any strong emotion, just conclusion. As if a cycle had come to an end, a story had been closed. I didn't try to run. I sat in the living room and called the police. "I killed my parents," I said when they answered. I gave the address and hung up. When the sirens approached, I went to the front of the house, still holding the knife. I let it drop on the lawn and raised my hands. The police officers approached me with guns drawn, threw me to the ground, handcuffed me. Standard procedure for a confessed murderer. At no point did I resist or deny. I told everything during the interrogation. Well, almost everything. I omitted the part about the illegal business, about the deliveries I was forced to make, not to protect their memory, but because I feared it might somehow diminish the severity of what they had done to me. I didn't want them to think I killed them to protect some crime secret or because of business rivalry. I killed them for what they did to me, for what they almost turned me into. I was tried as a minor. My public defender argued about years of abuse, psychological trauma. Witnesses confirmed that I was a quiet, withdrawn boy, clearly oppressed. Teachers talked about my frequent absences, my change in behavior over the years. A psychological examination proved the trauma. Still, I had killed 2 people. I was sentenced to 3 years in a juvenile detention center with mandatory psychiatric monitoring. The sentence could have been more severe, but the judge considered the exceptional circumstances. During the trial, I learned more about August and Claire. The police investigating the case found evidence of their business. Drugs hidden in the house, compromising documents, even my notebook with notes that I had completely forgotten that night. They also found the original birth certificate, confirming that I had indeed been acquired as debt payment. August and Claire, I discovered, were even worse than I had imagined. At the detention center, I was treated with a mixture of caution and compassion. Some staff clearly saw me as dangerous. After all, who kills their own parents, even if not biological, could do anything? Others understood my story, tried to help me. The strangest thing was realizing that for the first time in my life, I had 3 regular meals a day. No one locked me in closets. No one forced me to bark like a dog. No one threatened to prostitute me. The rigid routine of the center, which many teenagers hated, for me was almost comfortable, predictable, safe. During the 3 years I spent there, I worked a lot with my psychiatrist, Dr. Richards. At first, I barely spoke. I would sit in the chair and look out the window, but gradually I found words for everything that had happened. "You were deprived of your childhood," he told me one day, "forced to mature long before your time." It was true. When other children played, I delivered packages. When teenagers went to parties, I was locked in a closet. My entire life had been defined by August and Claire's needs and cruelties. At the detention center, I discovered simple things I had never experienced. True friendships, support from adults who really cared, a routine that didn't involve constant fear, a psychiatrist who saw me as a person, not as a tool. "You are not what they made of you," Dr. Richards would repeat. "Your actions were terrible, but your circumstances were also. What matters is what you will do from now on." I learned to paint during that time. I discovered I had some talent for it. The art therapy sessions were my favorite moments. There I could express what I couldn't say in words. My first paintings were dark, chaotic. Over time, colors began to appear, more defined shapes. I met other young people with stories similar to mine. Not the same, each trauma is unique. But we shared something. We had all been victims before becoming perpetrators. This didn't absolve us, but it helped us understand. They were difficult times, but necessary. When I finally left 3 months ago, I was a different person, not completely healed. I don't think that's possible, but more aware, more capable of understanding my own triggers, of recognizing when the past threatens to override the present. Today I live in a small rented house on the other side of town. I work part-time at a bookstore. I continue with therapy twice a week. The judge who handled my case placed me in a special reintegration program. I have a social worker who visits me regularly, helps me with bureaucracies, with planning for the future. It's not easy. I carry the weight of what I did every day. Not just the double homicide, although that's an enormous burden on its own, but also the awareness of all the deliveries I made, all the people I possibly harmed without even knowing their names. Sometimes I have nightmares. I relive that night. I wake up sweating, with the smell of blood so vivid it seems real. Other nights, I dream I'm locked in the closet, screaming for help, but no one comes. Dr. Richards says this is normal, that trauma doesn't disappear, but we learn to live with it, to integrate it into our story without letting it define who we are. I have plans to go back to school. I want to finish high school, maybe go to college someday. I like literature, art. Maybe I'll follow that path. I'm still discovering who I am when I'm not being controlled by someone, when I'm not just reacting to fear. People usually ask if I regret it. It's a complicated question. Do I regret taking 2 lives? Yes, deeply. Violence is not the answer, and I understand that now. But I also wonder what would have happened to me if I hadn't done what I did. Would I have ended up like so many other young people I met at the center, consumed by drugs, victims of human trafficking, dead on the streets? I don't know. Nobody knows. What I do know is that I'm trying to do something with this second chance. Trying to learn to be a person, not a tool. Trying to find a purpose that isn't just surviving. Sometimes I look at the starry sky and wonder if somewhere in the universe there exists a world where I grew up in a normal family, where I was loved, protected, where I never had to make deliveries, was never locked in closets, never held a bloody knife. But I don't live in that world. I live in this one, with its complexities, its wounds, its imperfect second chances. If you've made it this far and understood what I went through, if you really care about stories like mine, please like this video, subscribe to the Traumatic Accounts channel, turn on notifications, and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there now. It seems like a strange request, I know, but it helps me remember that on the other side of this camera there are real people in real moments of their lives, willing to listen to difficult stories like mine. And look, if you subscribe, you won't just be another subscriber. Those who subscribe here become part of a family that supports the kids in these accounts. With each subscription, you're saying, you are not alone. For you, it might just be a click, but for me, it means I'm not talking to myself. Each subscription makes my voice reach further, makes more people hear what I and other kids went through. If you don't subscribe, maybe no one else will listen. But if you hit that red button now, you show that I'm not alone. So subscribe, like the video, and comment, because that's what gives us strength to continue. Maybe my story can serve as a warning for people to observe more carefully the children around them, for teachers, neighbors, acquaintances not to so easily accept the excuses of abusive parents, for authorities to take reports seriously, even when they come from frightened children. There's no happy ending to a story like mine, but maybe there's a new beginning. That's what I try to believe as I leave this park and go home. My own home, where no one locks me in closets, where no one forces me to do terrible things, where I can slowly learn to be just myself, whoever that self may be. I'm still finding out. If you reached the end of this video and understood what I went through, if you truly care about stories like mine, please like this video, subscribe to the Traumatic Accounts channel, turn on notifications, and comment where you're watching from and what time it is there. I know it seems like a strange request, but it helps me remember that on the other side of this camera, there are real people in real moments of their lives willing to listen to difficult stories like mine. And look, subscribing isn't just clicking a button. When you subscribe to this channel, you become part of a family that supports kids sharing these traumatic accounts. With each subscription, you're saying, you are not alone. For you, it might just be a click, but for me it means I'm not speaking into the void. Each subscription helps my voice reach further, helps more people hear what I and other kids went through. If you don't subscribe, maybe no one else will hear these stories. But if you hit that red button now, you show that I'm not alone. So subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment, because that's what gives us the strength to continue. Perhaps my story can serve as a warning, for people to pay closer attention to the children around them, for teachers, neighbors, and acquaintances not to accept abusive parents' excuses so easily, for authorities to take reports seriously, even when they come from scared children. There's no happy ending to a story like mine, but there might be a new beginning. That's what I try to believe as I leave this park and return home, my own home, where no one locks me in closets, where no one forces me to do terrible things, where I can slowly learn to be just myself. Whoever that self might be, I'm still discovering.